All right, we've got some electrical receptacles in there. Now, let's say we didn't like the receptacle that went in there. We could zoom in here, pick on this guy, and this is in, you can do this in it with any object in Revit. Go in and pick a different type. So I can go in here and say, oh, sorry, you're a GFCI, and it's going to switch to do that. Okay, I don't appreciate the way this is done, and we do have a actual specific series at CAD Clips on fixing this problem. But aside from that, I could then, if I wanted to, and I would never put a bunch of GFIs in here, but I could use my match type tool and take this guy and match it to these guys. You can do that with anything, just kind of paint it over. And then I realize that's ridiculous, so I pick on here and I paint these guys back over here. So you can do that with walls and doors and windows and ducts and equipment and fixtures and devices and everything like that. So we've got a few receptacles in there, and we can pick on here anytime. Use your arrow key and just kind of nudge, nudge, nudge. So using your arrow key, you can pick on it and nudge it around. Get used to picking on these objects and looking at these properties, okay? This is a duplex receptacle. These are what are called instance properties. If you change these values, they change only for this one object. If you hit edit type on here, and then you change these values, like the switch voltage and the load classification and the load itself, okay, then that changes all of the standard duplex receptacles, which would change all of them. If I decided to change this to be, a different number, and I'm not going to, and clicked out and said OK, that would change this one, etc. If you want one that's similar, you pick on here and you say edit type and you say duplicate. Now you can create a new type, change some values, and that way you don't interrupt the old ones, and you've then cloned it and made a new one. As opposed to if you pick on here and change these properties, that simply only changes this one family. And that depends on how the family was created. Notice there's also some more information here. It tells you it's a receptacle, 180 volt amps and 120 volts, and it's got a number 1 wire, etc. And there's my little connector inside of there. Okay, there's a question mark in there, and I'm assuming that's, well, I know that it's because there's a property that's not being filled out somewhere. So I don't want to get into that, but as soon as this is created properly with the system and everything else, I'm sure that value will come clear. Probably the panel or circuit number, I would expect. So we pick out and zoom away. So that, we might go ahead with that. Now let's see what other devices we have in here. Let's go back to my system tab, electrical device. Let's see if we have a data device. So what do we have? Data devices, and we've got a data outlet and a plain old data outlet, nothing more. And notice as you move your mouse around, it's going to say here, click on host face to place instance, space bar to flip. So have a look always down here at your status bar. Place on vertical place on face again. You will get different results depending on what you're doing. Use your space bar to rotate it, okay? Use your tab key to pick different edges. In this case, we are going to go with the place on vertical face, and then we can add in some data drops over there. Maybe 2 data drops there. We can continue, with however we want to go in and place these. Anyway, this is really not that difficult. We have the elevation, and once we add it to a circuit and panel and system, all this information will then light up, and that'll show up in our schedule. So pretty easy stuff placing these guys around. Okay, hit escape. If I hit my, or sorry, not my F11, F9, I'll see that I have now some new data devices over here showing up in my nice system browser. So we'll start to get into this a little bit later. So just keep in mind that in the background, as you're adding in all these MEP families, Revit is tracking it in the system browser, and it's just putting it in under an unassigned system. So that's a little bit on devices. Let's have another look in here. Now, what if we want a data device and it's not on the list? So we say, okay, data device. This could apply to any of the devices. And you see on your list that it only has, one. And that's really because if you hit escape on the keyboard, you've done your homework ahead of time. You've gone in here and you've gone in and looked data device. There really is only one family. This is the category. This is the family. These are the types. Some families have more than one type. If we look at ducts, we'll see that, there's only one in there. If we look at this duplex receptacle family, under this category, there's two types. So this is a family file, a .rfa file, and there's two types. So let's go in and load a family. So we can do this, a couple different ways. We can start the device tool and say, give me a data device. And then we go to look at our list and we say, there's not, the one we want. So then we can go from there and simply say load family. And then from there we can go to electrical MEP, and then we can go to information and communication, and we can go in and grab a data outlet. I think let's go Ethernet junction box. Let's see. I want to get something that's going to stick to the wall. Is there a card swiper or anything in here? A wall speaker, TV, time, clock, telephone outlet. Sure, that looks good enough. So look, there's floor, dual, and there's telephone outlet data. So this has got both in it. And we'll just use I think that one looks good. So we hit open. You can also use your control button in here and pick more than one at a time. So telephone outlet. Simple enough. Bring it in, overwrite existing. Oh, so that's not actually a data device. So that ends up, that's interesting. It said overwrite, which means there's one in here. And that is because telephone devices get listed separately over here. So it's actually not a telephone device, is not a data device. Didn't get filed in over here. So let's go back in here and say, okay, fair enough. Let's grab a telephone object and go in here and say, okay, telephone wall. So I can say, okay, there's a telephone wall outlet, one there, and one over here. Probably you would have them by your data device as well. So that comes in. Now, if you don't like the way this family looks, then you actually have to go in and edit that family. Now let's go back and hit escape on the keyboard or pick the modify button, which will do the same thing. Let's go back and say data device. The interesting thing is as you do this and you say load family, it's going to be under electrical here. There's no data device folder. And then we go MEP, connectors, electrical part, information communication, building communication, nursing security. So data outlet floor, I guess, let's bring that in. Okay, sure enough, because we know at least it's going to show up as a data device. Bring it in, and this one's a little bit different because it's going to, we don't want it placed on, you see we've got the stop sign, this is a good example. We want to say place on work plane, which is down here on the floor plan. So I can pick on there. Oh, none of the create elements are visible in the floor plan power. Okay, we'll have to have a look at that. Let's say place on face just to see if it makes a difference. I'm sure it won't. Pick on here, say, so this is good. We're getting a warning. We're placing data devices. They happen to be floor based and they're not showing up. So every time you do this and you hear that click, it means it's trying to place one, and it actually is placing it. It's like putting it on a frozen layer. So we can hit escape. Now we have to go find where those objects went to. So we hit exit on here. We have to do a little bit of investigation. I'm wondering if because it's floor based that our view range isn't going down far enough to pick those up. So let's go to our floor plan. Let's go to our view here, pick in here, go down to our view range and say, okay, down to level 1, let's go minus, minus 6 inches, just so we go into the floor a bit. And this has to be at least that as well. Don't forget to say inches, which is 150 millimeters. Hit apply, hit OK, and sure enough, there they are. So the reason there is that the data device that we placed is in the floor, and our view range stops right at the floor. So we had to look a little bit into it to get those to place, and I'm not sure I'm crazy about the actual symbology of that. But there it is. So back to our device, data device. Okay, again, we can go load family, or I'm going to backtrack and hit my modify and say data device, lighting. So a light switch or something, data device, and it's going to say, well, lighting switches. We've got circuit breaker, dimmer, door, single pole, three-way, timer. So we'll go with the standard single pole, and we'll say, okay, there's a light switch here. And for some reason or another, we put the light switch there. Probably, for localized lighting, but it doesn't matter. We would go around, the floor plan. This isn't really difficult work. And notice it says place on face, so we're placing light fixtures. Okay, we'll talk all about adding them to circuits and all that good stuff inside of here. So all we're doing in here is adding in our light switches. So you kind of crawl around using your middle mouse button, panning around. I don't know if you could put a light switch on there or how that one would work. Right in the mullion, or else it would be built in automatically, most likely. But adding in your light switches, okay, then we can say modify, go back to devices and say, okay, a nurse call device. No nurse call device family is loaded. Aha, so there we go. So it gives us the option to place one, but it says there's none of them loaded. So we say, would you like to load one? It says, sure, let's load it. So then we're going to go back into our electrical folder here. In this case, I'm in US Imperial. I could go back in here and pick a metric folder as well if I wanted to. Okay, libraries, US metric, US Imperial. Stick with that. Electrical, MEP, and I believe that would be communication. Nurse call, there it is. Nurse station, sure. Hit OK, or open, I should say. Again, place on vertical face, I'm sure is going to work. So if these are our patient rooms over here, let's pan out a little bit. Where's some offices? There we go. Rather large. Nurse pull stations are probably closer to the beds, in fact. Notice the connectors and everything else. So here's our hospital walls. We go around, place our nurse call stations. Oh, that first one didn't work. Okay. Again, these are all going to get placed in our project browser or in our system browser. Escape, F11 on, sorry, not F11, F9. And under electrical, sure enough, nurse call station. So these are categories here. And these are all the individual devices that are getting placed. F9 again on the keyboard. Get rid of that. Okay, so have a look around. There's some more options inside of here. Okay, so that's kind of like the devices part of it, And then as you load these in, they're getting loaded, and you'll notice they're going to start to get placed in over here. So this is the kind of the master index of them. And quite frankly, you can just go in here and drag them. You can just take this, drag it out, place it. Grab this guy, take it, drag it out, place it. Electrical equipment, Transformer. Find yourself an electrical room. Transformer wants to be placed on a. Oh, notice there's different options here. Because the transformer doesn't have to stick to a wall, it can kind of be freestanding and just get placed anywhere. Although it will kind of stick to different surfaces as you place it. Okay, so you can drag the majority of this stuff straight from the project browser right into the model. And I find that it's just kind of old school rather than picking them off of here. But I am definitely getting used to using the different tools up here. But essentially, all of these reach in and grab the objects from in here. It's just that some of them are static objects, like a light switch or a, you know, um, or a nurse call station or an outlet, but these ones actually start line work. Like when you do conduit, you start picking points and stuff. It doesn't just place an object, it actually lets you create a routed object. So these are a little bit different, but they're still using these objects inside of see conduits. When you start your conduit tool, it says pick points, and then it'll go in and let you use these different type of conduits and stuff inside of here. So we're not done yet in talking about the different placement objects, but there's a little bit on devices. And when you remember, whenever you place anything, always, oh, it's again no security device. I have to hit yes, and then go in and load one down in here off of security device. I don't see it. Maybe it's under electrical. Yeah, MEP, communication, security. So I could go in and card reader. There we go. Bring one in. Place a card reader as we go. Always have a look at this because you'll see the stop sign. When you see the stop sign, it's your hint to come up and have a look over here. Tag on placement will make it so that as you do it, it actually will tag the object if there's an actual tag loaded. Okay, so we do have more CAD clips on placement options, but have a look here as you're placing these, and we'll continue to talk about more placement methods using Revit MEP objects.